Will this be the reason that India have yet another failed World Cup campaign?
After India's squad announcement to the World Cup, there were a lot of positives in the way the selectors selected the squad, continuing to give rewards to the players who performed and selecting them, especially with the likes of Radha Yadav, who may not have played a lot of ODI matches but has made a mark in the T20 format and did leave a mark against Australia while playing for India A. There were surely a lot of fans who were happy with the selection, but there are a few constraints to think about before heading into the World Cup. A lot of people talking about Harleen Deol's strike rate, the absence of Shafali Verma, the inexperienced bowling lineup, and the possible lack of variety in the spin department is something a lot of people are concerned about. Now, before we cover all of this, hit the subscribe button.
Going from the top and looking at the batting order, India's got most of it right, and in fact, they have a really solid middle order. But there is a little bit of confusion up top, especially with Shafali Verma not being selected. It is no surprise that a lot of fans think that Shafali Verma should have been a part of the squad, and that's partly to do with the popularity she's had playing for Indian cricket for all this while. But if you look at it from the numbers point of view, it's a different story. While Verma was still around the T20 and even the Test squad, Shafali Verma last played for the Indian team in the ODI format in the New Zealand series in 2024. Here in 3 innings, she scored just 56 runs at an average of 18.6, and in general, she'd had a very lean patch in the ODI format. In fact, since the July of 2022, Shafali Verma was yet to score a 50-plus score in ODI cricket. The last time she did score a 50 was 12 innings ago in the ODI format. Since then, she has averaged 14.25 and has got barely 171 runs. And while she is someone who can be an X-factor player and is someone who can be explosive right from the start, the biggest concern was that she was getting starts and throwing it away. This is something that still continues to remain the trend, as we have seen in the Australia A series as well, but all in all, this was the reason for Shafali Verma to get dropped in the first place. The Australia A series might have been a chance for Shafali to make a case for herself for that World Cup squad, but here too she didn't particularly shine. Getting just 150 in the 3 matches and getting 92 runs overall at an average of 30 meant that she's continuing in the same trend where she gets a start and then somehow manages to get out. And just for this reason alone, Pratika Rawal was firstly brought into the ODI squad, and from there she was fairly consistent. Although her first few games came against weaker nations and we don't really know how well she will do against bigger teams like in Australia or England, that is something that we will find out really soon in the Australia series, but in her limited period of games that she's played, Pratika Rawal has seemed to impress. In fact, at one point she also got 5 consecutive 50-plus scores, and this just goes to show that she has her head in the right place.
Interestingly enough, the backup opener that the Indian team have selected for the World Cup and a possible replacement at number 3, Yastika was the highest scorer from the Indian team in the Australia A tour. In the 3 matches, she averaged 55 with a strike rate of 85 and also had 2 50s under her name. And the fact that she's also an excellent wicketkeeper might also be a factor for why she was picked ahead of Shafali Verma. And this is where we come to the number 3 position and talk about Harleen Deol. Even though she's been impressive so far batting at number 3, something she's been criticized for is the fact that a strike rate may not be all that impressive, which is why we have looked deeper to find out if this is really the case. Now, when you compare Harleen Deol and Yastika at number 3, you will realize that there is no real comparison, and Harleen Deol really stands out. In the 16 matches that Harleen has batted at number 3, she averages 38 with a strike rate of 79. In this, she also has 100 and 150, whereas if you look at Yastika Bhatia, there have been 20 matches where she's batted at number 3 with an average of just 26 and a strike rate of 74. Of course, in this time period, she also has 450s, but if you look at her averages and strike rates, you will really understand why Harleen Deol is higher up in the pecking order. And this is also why we break down the innings and understand if strike rate is really a problem. Interestingly enough, every time Harleen Deol has reached the score of 20 in the ODI format, she has a strike rate of just 67. But then when you compare her to someone like a Yastika Bhatia, every time she's reached the score of 20, she has a strike rate of whopping 81.9, which is almost 20% better than Harleen Deol. But you will also realize that Harleen Deol is that kind of batter who will up her strike rate through the innings, because by the time she reaches 40, her strike rate then becomes 78. A very fascinating observation here is the fact that every time Harleen Deol has tried to go quick, she doesn't get all that big of a score, because every time she's reached 20 and a strike rate is 70 plus, she tends to get out below 30. And that's when you ask the Indian management, what would you really want? Someone like a Yastika Bhatia who averages 26 at number 3 doesn't necessarily get a big score all the time, or someone like a Harleen Deol who can take her time but will get that big score. For someone who has only 100 and 150 batting at number 3 across 16 innings but has an average of 38, shows that she is able to get a start and build partnership around the batter she's batting with. The only problem is 50% of her dismissals have come between the scores of 20 and 49, which again tells you that she's able to get the start but not able to score big, which is a double-edged sword because she is able to get that score at not a very high strike rate, but she is the kind of batter who will be able to make sure that there are no collapses because the batters coming after her, like Harmanpreet Kaur, Jemima Rodriguez, Amanjot Kaur, and even Richa Ghosh for that matter, will be able to up that strike rate. Now, obviously, because of all of these numbers, Harleen Deol becomes an automatic pick and a starter at number 3 against Australia before the World Cup starts. But one of the only things she needs to make sure is that it's okay for her to take her time because of the batters around her, but she will need to ensure that she is able to score big.
And from here, when we move to the next potential chink in the armor for this Indian team, it is the inexperience of their fast bowling lineup. While India is lucky to have Renuka Singh Thakur back right before the World Cup, it is important to understand that she is the only bowler who is coming in with any kind of ODI experience. Barring Renuka Singh Thakur, who's played at least 10 plus ODIs, all of the remaining fast bowlers in Kranti Gaud, Arundhati Reddy as well as Amanjot Kaur have all played less than 10 ODIs. What you also need to understand is this is a squad where all of these pacers have rightfully got their spots because of how consistent they've been in this 2025 season. But something to keep note of is that none of these bowlers have World Cup experience. In fact, even Renuka Singh Thakur, although she was part of the 2022 ODI squad, never really got a game in that tournament. And just picture this, right? You're a strong Indian team going into the World Cup. The World Cup is at home, which means there is already an expectation and added pressure. And for these players who are yet to play in a World Cup, let alone a World Cup knockout game, it is going to be a lot of pressure and it will be tougher for them to come good. One positive though is that all of these girls have game time under their belt. Not only that, they have game time under situations where there is a lot of pressure. These are all players who have been consistently playing the WPL, but even apart from that, they have been a part of this India season. They did play that Tri-Series tournament and they have been playing some crucial games in a place like England. And so India will be fairly optimistic and it shouldn't be a problem for them starting off in the tournament. But for the big games like when India is playing in Australia or in England and they are under the gun, it is going to be interesting to see how they respond. And this is where the conversation around Pooja Vastrakar rises. Because she is one player who would have been absolutely clutch in this squad. She would have been beautiful for the balance of the squad because she is someone who not only has good returns with the ball but can also bat a fair bit. In the 33 matches that Pooja Vastrakar has played in ODI cricket, she has a decent batting average of 25 and she's also taken 27 wickets at an economy of 5.5. Not only that, she also strikes at 87, which is no mean feat, and she also has 450s, showing that she would have been a great addition to the squad, especially in the lower middle order. Not just with the bat but also with the ball. It is unfortunate that she last played for India in October of 2024 and was then sidelined due to an injury, and she also has not been able to make it back in time for the World Cup. With the current crop of fast bowlers, it will be interesting to see how India decides to rotate these bowlers, because you know for a fact that Arundhati Reddy, Kranti Gaud as well as Renuka Singh can all use the new ball. In fact, even Amanjot Kaur has shown that she can be more than handy when it comes to using that ball up front in the power play. And so considering all of this, what India will be more worried about is who is going to be coming into those middle overs and be used to take wickets. We've seen Renuka Singh Thakur and we've covered her in the previous videos of how she has improved her middle overs game a lot. But considering that she will be coming back from injury, will she be able to take the mantle right away? India can of course take solace in the fact that the spinners are a lot more experienced, but another question that comes up there is that do we have enough variety in that spin department? India is playing out and out finger spinners in the likes of Deepti Sharma, Radha Yadav, Surana as well as Sri Charani. You have 2 right arm off spinners and 2 left arm orthodox spinners, which means that there is no real variety in the squad apart from the fact that there are subtle differences in how each of these bowlers operates. Especially considering the fact that this World Cup is going to be happening at home in India means that there are going to be a lot of pitches that are conducive to spin bowling. And given this scenario, would India have benefited from playing at least one different kind of spinner, someone who can possibly bowl leg spin? India's 2 options for potential leg spinners would have been Prema Rawat or Priya Mishra. These are both players who in the recent past have shown that they are good leg spinners and have done fairly well, especially in the T20 format. However, when it comes to ODI cricket or 50 overs games in general, they don't have as much experience. They have managed to make it to the reserves, but if you look deeper, there's a reason why these players weren't picked in the 15. Firstly, coming to Prema Rawat, she is somebody who can bowl leg spin but is more known for her all-round batting abilities. While she's only played 3 games of WPL cricket, it is clearly evident that she is in the reckoning for being around the India squad. And that's because she was a part of the India squad that recently played against Australia. While she did do well in the T20s, she only played 2 50-over games. Here too, she didn't fare particularly badly, but she didn't do anything extraordinary ordinary either. In the 2 games, her bowling returns were none for 54 and 1 for 40, which goes to show that she is someone who is still figuring her way out at the highest level of cricket and particularly does not have that wicket taking ability as of yet. And so in her case, it is very straightforward as to why she wasn't picked in the squad, and simply that's because of her lack of experience. And that brings us to the other more likely option who could have made it into that Indian squad, and that's Priya Mishra. Priya Mishra has already played for India. In fact, she was playing till 2025. She played 9 ODIs where she got 15 wickets, and she was someone that India looked to get a lot of wickets, especially in the middle overs. However, she was slightly on the expensive side, going at 5.8 runs to the over, but that's something that you will expect from a leg spinner. What did not work for Priya Mishra was how fast she was out of the reckoning of the Indian team. Where she last played an ODI for India against Ireland in 2025, her figures were 2 for 53 in that last game. However, after that was the period where she played the WPL, and her WPL was horrendous. In the WPL in 2025, she played 9 games where she got just 6 wickets and her economy was 9.1. This of course meant that she was going to be a little out of favor in that tri-series tournament, and from there on she was not particularly someone who got games for India. And given these two players and how they've fared recently, it was important for India to be able to pick a lineup that had at least some kind of experience. Because of the fact that a lot of our fast bowlers through the season were injured, it meant that there were already new names in the likes of Kranti Gaud or someone like an Arundhati Reddy coming into the ODI format. And given that inexperience in the fast bowling lineup, it was necessary to at least pack your spin bowling lineup with people who are experienced.
And this is where Harmanpreet Kaur, the captain, steps in, because the way she rotates the bowlers, especially the fast bowlers, depending on the conditions, will be very, very important. We know that in India, we'll mostly play a lot of spinners and possibly 2 fast bowlers. And the choices and the balance with which the Indian team goes with these bowlers is what will make Harmanpreet stand out as the captain. Not only this, but the way she controls situations and environment on the field will be a lot more important because of the lack of experience the fast bowlers are going into this World Cup. And all of this that we have talked about will be reflected in the series against Australia heading into the World Cup. It might possibly be a small trailer to what we can see at the World Cup. Now, this has been a video on the Indian team and some of the things that they need to think about before heading into the World Cup, because this might just be a cause of concern. Now, if you have enjoyed this video, like, share and subscribe, all that good stuff. All of our links are in the description below. If you haven't been a member on our channel, do that too. And if you haven't followed our socials, do that too. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.